On a chilly March night in 2008, 22-year-old Christy Ann Shattuck vanished from her life, leaving behind a trail of mystery and deception that would shock the quiet town of Bend, Oregon. Christy was a lonely heiress to a local family's fortune, a title that came with both privilege and pressure. Her family's wealth was built on a successful business empire, but behind the scenes, a dark web of secrets and lies had been spun. Christy's disappearance was met with a mixture of concern and relief from her family, but as the investigation unfolded, it became clear that nothing was as it seemed. As detectives with the Bend Police Department, led by Detective Jason Lawrence, began to dig deeper, they discovered that Christy's family had initially denied knowing anything about her disappearance. But the more they dug, the more they found inconsistencies in their alibi, and a cast of suspicious characters began to emerge. Christy's cousin, James Shattuck, was one of the first to raise eyebrows, with his shaky alibi and suspicious behavior. As the investigation continued, the detectives encountered a maze of dead ends and complications. They followed leads on potential suspects, only to find them going cold. They scoured the town for witnesses, but everyone seemed to have an alibi. The case against James Shattuck grew stronger, but there were still too many questions unanswered. What was the motive behind Christy's murder? Was it a crime of passion, or a calculated act of greed? But then, a shocking twist threw the entire case off course. A private investigator hired by Christy's family stumbled upon a revelation that would change the course of the investigation forever. It turned out that Christy's family had been trying to hide her murder to avoid losing their fortune. The family's lawyer, a man named David, had been involved in the cover-up, and it seemed that he had been working closely with James Shattuck to keep the truth hidden. The revelation sent shockwaves through the small town of Bend, and the investigation was thrown into high gear. The detectives were stunned by the family's involvement in the cover-up, and they knew they had to act fast to bring the truth to light. They built a case against James Shattuck, using the evidence they had gathered to demonstrate his guilt. Key witness testimony from a former family employee, who had been coerced into silence, finally came forward, revealing the family's deep-seated motives. The motive was clear: the family had stood to lose millions if the truth about Christy's murder came to light. As the trial approached, the town of Bend was on edge. The Shattuck family's reputation was in tatters, and the community was demanding justice for Christy's murder. In the end, it was a jury that delivered the verdict, finding James Shattuck guilty of Christy's murder. During the trial, a dramatic moment occurred when James's alibi for the night of the murder was exposed as a fabrication, further solidifying the prosecution's case. He was sentenced to life in prison, a fate that seemed fitting for a crime that had been so carefully planned and executed. The case against James Shattuck was a shocking reminder that even in the most seemingly idyllic communities, darkness can lurk beneath the surface. The Shattuck family's attempts to cover up Christy's murder had only led to their downfall, and the town of Bend was left to pick up the pieces. Christy's memory lived on, a reminder of the devastating consequences of greed and deception. As the investigation unfolded, Detective Jameson's team discovered that Christy, a 25-year-old heiress, had been murdered in her family's mansion on a chilly autumn evening in 1995. Neighbors reported hearing a loud argument between Christy and her father, James, in the hours leading up to her death. However, when questioned by police, James claimed he was in his study, working on business documents, at the time of the murder. A key witness, a family friend and former business associate of James, came forward with a statement that would later prove crucial in the trial. According to the witness, James had been embezzling funds from his company for years, and Christy had discovered his scheme. The witness claimed that Christy had threatened to expose her father's deceit, which led to a heated confrontation on the night of her murder. In the months following Christy's death, investigators discovered a series of suspicious transactions on the family's bank statements, including large withdrawals and transfers between various offshore accounts. The evidence pointed to a premeditated murder, orchestrated by James to silence his daughter and protect his own interests. As the trial approached, the prosecution presented a damning case against James, with testimony from the family friend and other witnesses who corroborated the story of Christy's discovery of her father's embezzlement. The defense, on the other hand, argued that James was innocent and that the murder was the result of a random break-in gone wrong. In the end, it was the testimony of the family friend that sealed James's fate. The witness's account of James's motive and the subsequent cover-up was so convincing that the jury delivered a guilty verdict. James Shattuck was sentenced to life in prison without parole, a fitting punishment for the heinous crime he had committed. Christie's memory lived on, a cautionary tale of the dangers of greed and the devastating consequences of deception.